In this tutorial, we're going to look at changing the background of our game. So we're going to start by looking on the internet and to find a picture for our game. So I'm just going to type in Prideland and hopefully click the images and see if we can find something. So here, this picture looks appropriate for our elephant. So we'll just click on it and right-click on the picture and save image as. And I'm going to name it just something like background. We're going to put that background file inside our Greenfoot project folder. Inside there's a folder also called images, so we'll type in background and save it inside that folder. So click save and it should be there. So now we go back to our Greenfoot editor and right click on the My World class. We'll set the background image to the new image. When we hit reset, the new background should appear. So now I'd like to add some sound to our game so that when our elephant eats the apple, it makes a sound. So we're going to go on the internet again and look up sound effects. So elephant sound effects, what I type in. I like going to this site called Free Sound Effects. Turns out the first one, when I click elephant, is the elephant sound. There's a little elephant cub sound. So I'm going to download that MP3 file. It sounds good to me. And I'm going to save it as elephant sound. And when I play it, it makes that noise. So now, make sure you do save it in the Greenfoot folder under the sounds folder inside the project folder for Greenfoot. And I'm going to actually just going to move it over. I've got it saved here in my downloads folder. I'm going to move it to my project folder under, in my setup, I got it under repos. My folder is called elephant. And I'm going to look for the sound folder and save it there. So everything's organized. Okay, so I'm going to close that folder up and then go back to the elephant class. And inside the elephant editor, I'm going to add the sound. So I'm going to actually clean this up a bit. We don't need those comments there. We could probably write something better. But here at the top of the elephant class, I'm going to type in Greenfoot sound. That's the class that I'm going to create. I'm going to create a sound object. Let's just name it elephant sound. And to create the instance, I always have to say new, and then the name of the class, Greenfoot sound. And in brackets for the constructor for this class, I need to supply the file name. Now, since we have it saved in the sound folder, I just give it the name of the file that we saved it as, which was elephant cub. Okay, if you want to just check out more information about how to do this, you can always check the documentation. Greenfoot sound is where you can create sound objects. It tells you how to create sound objects, and under the constructor definition, it needs a file name. So that's what we just did to create this sound object. And all you have to do now is run this method here called play, and that starts playing the sound from that Greenfoot sound object. So back to elephant. I think I'd like for it to play that sound every time it eats an apple. So I'm going to scroll down to the method called eat, and this is where it eats the apple, and I'm going to have the sound play as well. So the elephant sound, which is the name of the elephant sound instance, dot play. And I should play the sound every time it eats the apple. So I'm going to compile, close that, and run the game just to check to make sure it works. It falls down there. Good. Okay, so in this tutorial, I'd like to show you how you might animate your images. So I'm going to go online and look for an elephant sprite image, which will be a set of images showing the elephant in different poses. So this one looks pretty good. It's got a bunch of different elephant poses. I'm going to save that address, so copy the image address, and I'm going to go use an online Spritesheet cutter. I'm just going to choose this free one. It's if you Google that, an online Spritesheet cutter, you'll get to this link. And I'm just going to paste the URL that I just copied with the elephant images. Okay, so when that happens, you'll get all these images again. And the images I want are just really the first 5 here for now, which shows the elephant kind of wagging its trunk, which might look cute. So I want those. So I'm going to crop this image first to get rid of everything else. I'd like to keep these first 5 images in the sprite sheet. So I'll change and play with this until I get this right. So I'm trying to change the numbers to 250, 50, and when I crop the image, I've got a few things at the bottom that I don't really like, so I'm going to try a different number here, 45. Crop, and that looks right. Okay, so now that I'm happy with this, I'm going to save this image onto my computer. I'm going to click save, and there's the images. And so here in the folder, I'm going to be able to see that here as the GIF. I'm going to rename this to represent the image. So it's going to be actually my elephant being idle, kind of swinging its trunk. Okay, so now back to the Spritesheet cutter. I'm going to upload that image that I just saved back to the Spritesheet cutter right there, and I'll open it up. And I'll upload that photo, and now I'm going to kind of work on it. So I split up the 5 different elephant poses into 5 different frames. So I'm going to do it by tile size first. You can kind of play and experiment with this to see what works best for you. In the end, we just want 5 different images for our elephant, these 5 that are given here. And that looks okay, but let me see if I can do it this way by choosing the number of columns. I got 5 columns of elephants in 1 row, and that should split it up properly. That might work. So I'm going to download this as a zip file back onto my computer, and we should now have 5, there it is, 5 different frames, each one named and numbered differently. So I'll get rid of the zip file, and here's the file with 5 different frames of our elephant. What I'm going to do is actually rename each of these images to correspond with the elephant idle thing. So idle 0 represents the first frame, idle 1 is going to be our second frame, and we'll just do the same for all of them. So idle 1, idle 2, and I'm going to do the same for 3 and 4. Now you'll also notice as I'm doing this, I've got the elephant swinging its trunk out, but in my game I'd actually like the elephant to have its trunk swinging outwards and then also back inwards, so it looks like kind of a repeating motion. So I actually need its trunk to come back in. So I'll take idle 3, and I'm going to copy that image, and we'll just make that and rename it so it's idle 5. So, and then we'll do the same with idle 2. We'll make that also an image at idle 6. And you'll understand why when we loop through this, it'll just kind of swing its trunk out and back in. We're going to do the same with idle 1, rename it, copy it, paste it, and rename it idle 7. Okay, so when I do that, if I kind of scroll through the images, you'll see, get an idea of what's going to happen. I got the elephant here swinging its trunk out, and then it comes back in. That looks pretty good. Okay, so in this part, I'd like to continue on with the animations of our elephant swinging its trunk. So I'm going to take the elephant image that we downloaded and cropped and changed into these 7 or 8 frames, and here's again its trunk swinging out and then swinging back in, so that looks pretty good. I'd like to turn that into some animation. Just before we do that, we need to just I need to go over how to show an image in code. So this is how you would create an image in code. And so there's a class called GreenfootImage, and I'm going to go ahead and create a new instance of this image. I'll call it idle equals new GreenfootImage. Now, again, to figure out what the constructor needs, I need to go to the documentation, open it up, click on the packages tab at the top, go to the GreenfootImage class, and scroll down to see how these constructors are used. So the one I want to use is this one. I need to specify the name of the image file, and so we're going to go back, and in my elephant class, I'll click and type in the name of the file. Now the image is located inside the images folder, inside the elephant underscore idle folder, and we have 8 images, and one of them is called idle0.png. So I'm going to use that for now, just to show one picture. And now that we have our image, I need to display it. And the way that you can display a Greenfoot image is using the setImage method. I'm going to create a constructor for our elephant. A constructor is the code that gets run the first time an elephant object is created. So elephant. A reminder that constructors have the same name as its class, so just elephant. And this, again, is the code that gets run the first time this instance is created. And when this instance is created, what I like to do is just set its image to that first elephant idle image. So I'm going to use the code setImage, because that's available for you to use. And I'm going to say idle, which is the name of the Greenfoot image that I created above. So setImage idle should make our elephant look like the first frame of our image. If you, again, documentation-wise, if you go and look at Greenfoot image, the code inside the actor class, you can set images by just calling setImage and then providing a Greenfoot image. In this part of the tutorial, we're going to look at how we can animate the elephant. We're going to start by removing the image object that we created and replacing it with an array of images. So inside the elephant constructor, we're actually going to create a loop that loops through an array of the images that we created. So I'm going to start a loop that goes from 0 to, we have 8 images, so I'll use 8. And inside the loop, we're going to need to have those 8 different images. So the easiest way is to create an array. So we do that by creating a square bracket here. We're going to delete this file name, and we're going to say that there's going to be 8 different elements inside our array. And those elements will be GreenfootImage elements. So I can change this to idle.length, which is the name of our array. And length will tell us that there's going to be 8 things in that array, 8 elements in the array. And we're going to say idle1, which accesses the first element the first time through the loop. And we're going to set that to the Greenfoot image contained inside the file images elephant idle. Now the name of our files are numbered, and they're named idle with a number. So we're going to stop with the word idle, and then we add I, which represents the number. In the first time through loop will be 0. And then at the end, the PNG extension. So that should properly load up all the frames of our image into Greenfoot images inside our array. So now we take a look. The elephant isn't swinging its trunk yet, but we're going to write some code to do that now. Okay, so next thing we're going to do, since all the images are now loaded, we need to have some kind of a loop or some kind of way to cycle through all those images. So I'm going to actually create a new method. We'll call it animate, and the method is used to animate the elephant. So public void animate, maybe animate elephant, and then in here we'll just write the code that gets the images looped through. So we could use a for loop here. However, the for loop isn't the greatest way to do it because you're going to cycle through all the images in one step of the act method. So instead, we're going to set the image to the first idle image using an index value. So the image index value I'm going to have to create up here, and we'll say int image index equals 0 to represent the first index. That's the first image that gets loaded up. And every time we call the animate elephant method, I'm going to increase that image index by 1. I'm also going to add a little bit here that might be confusing, but what this part does is that I'm going to mod the length of the array, which will just prevent the variable image index from getting too big. It will always be a value between 0 and 7. So that's what we want. So now when we want to animate the elephant, we're just actually going to call that method that we just created to animate the elephant. So here we'll just say animate elephant. So what should happen is, well, I'm going to semicolon there. Let's format that correctly. Now when we run this, it should step through the different frames. Now, I got an error here, so I'm going to go back. Every time you have an error, it says image out of bounds exception. So something here, it's trying to load an image, let's say like 9 or 10 that doesn't exist, and we actually have to put this first part in brackets and then mod the length. Okay, now when we run it, let's close that. We should have the elephant swinging its trunk. Now there it is. If you look closely, it's swinging its trunk a little bit too quickly actually. So we'll fix that up in a later tutorial. So what I'd like to do now is to increase the size of our elephant. It's looking a little small on our screen. It's cute, but it's a little small. So we're gonna go to the documentation, and then under GreenfootImage, that class, we're going to scroll down to see if there's a method that we can use. And there is one. It's called scale. And scale we can use to change the size of the image. So we're going to go back to our code. So in the elephant class, open the editor. And we're going to go to the constructor, which is the constructor, again, is called when we create our elephant for the first time. And I'd like to take each of these images that we're loading from file and scale it. So let's choose a number here. We need an integer for the height and an integer for the width and the height. So 50, let's try 50/50, and when we compile that and run it, it kind of looks the same size. So we're going to actually try a different set of numbers. We'll maybe change it, instead of 50, maybe 100, and that's for the width, and 100 for the height. So when we compile that, oh, that's much better. It's a larger elephant. and it's working the way we expect. Okay, in this tutorial I'd like to make more improvements to our elephant game. The improvement I'm going to make today is to have our elephant move so that when it's going to the right, it's going to show an image where the elephant's facing to the right, and then when it's moving left, it'll face to the left. And then what we're going to need to do is in the elephant class, create a variable to keep track of which direction our elephant is facing. So at the beginning, string facing equals right will be a string variable, which states that our elephant to begin with is facing to the right. I'll add a little comment there. And then inside our constructor, actually just before we get to the constructor, we need to change the naming of our array that holds all the Greenfoot images of the elephant facing right. I'm going to create a second array that's going to be an array of all the images of our elephant that's facing to the left. Okay, so there's 8 frames to each image, and then now in our elephant constructor, we're going to go into the for loop. I'll rename the array that has our elephant facing to right, all the images, to idle right, and then we'll set all those images accordingly. And here is the images of our elephant all facing to the right, all loaded into the program. And then we're going to need another loop to load all the images of our elephant facing to the left. Now we don't actually have elephant images that are facing to the left. All the ones that we have our elephant facing to the right, but we're going to do a little trick to kind of flip the image. It's called mirroring. And so let me just finish the code for this loop. So instead of idle right, we're going to actually have copy the code, and we'll make this idle left will be an array that holds all the images of our elephant facing left. And okay, so there. Now what we're going to need to do is when we load the image, when it's facing left, we'll just simply use this code idle left equals idle left dot mirror horizontally. If you hit control space, it'll show up all the methods that are available to you to use, and one of them is called mirror horizontally. So we're going to add that, and that should flip our elephant image from facing right to now facing left. Okay, so now what we're going to need to do is in our animate elephant method, we're going to need to just change some of the code so that when we set our image, we are setting the appropriate image depending on whether our elephant is facing right or if it's facing left. So if our elephant is facing right, so if facing.equals right, then we're going to set the image so that the idle right image is shown, and it's going to cycle through those images. Okay, so it's just like that. Otherwise, else, if it's not facing right, we'd like to set our images so that we show the elephant facing to the left. So set image, we'll just copy this code up here actually. Let's copy that and just paste down here. So set image to the idle left. So this is going to be idle left image. Okay, so let's just compile it. Oh, we have an error up here somewhere. Let's take a look. Scroll back up, and it doesn't like this part here. So let's just take a look at what the issue is. Mirror horizontally needs to convert to an image. So actually, the proper way to use this is actually to just state the image that we want to mirror. So idle left dot mirror horizontally. Okay, so let's compile that. We're going to move to the right, and oh, it's when we move to the left, the elephant isn't turning around. So we actually have to add one more piece of code. It's actually in the elephant class again, and we need to say when we actually hit the arrow left key, we need to change this facing variable so that's going to the left. So down in the act method, where we hit the keys, it detects whether or not we press the left or right arrow key. If we press the left arrow key, our facing variable should now be equal to the value of left. And if we hit the right arrow key, our facing variable should be right. Now let's compile that, run it, going left. Now there it is. The elephant now is able to flip around and wag its trunk. Okay, perfect. What I'd like to do now for elephant is to slow down its trunk wagging. So the way we're going to do that is go into the top part of the menu, import class, and we're going to use a simple timer to slow down the elephant's trunk wagging. So once we import that class, it's available to us. We can go to the right part of the editor and choose documentation view, which is a view of the methods available to us in this class. So when we create an instance of this class, we can use mark and millis elapsed. You can read more about that in the documentation. Now, in the elephant class, we're going to first of all need to create an instance of this simple timer class that we just imported. So we need to choose a place to put that, and the constructor might be a good place. Simple timer. But now, actually, a better place would be actually at the top of the code. So inside the elephant class, simple timer, animation timer. Sounds like a good name to use. Equals new simple timer. The constructor for simple timer doesn't take any parameters, so that's just the way we would create it, new simple timer. And inside the elephant constructor, we just use this instance that we just declared at the top, animation timer dot mark. And what that does is it resets the timer so that it starts from 0, so that now we can check the milliseconds elapsed from 0 to determine what we want to do. So inside the animation, the animate elephant method, we're going to take the animation timer, and we're going to do millis elapsed, which determines the number of milliseconds elapsed from the last time we marked it. And if that milliseconds elapsed is less than 1,000 milliseconds, 1,000 milliseconds is the same as 1 second. That might be a little bit too long, but we'll start with this. What we're going to do is just return out of this method. So if 1 second or less has elapsed, we're just not going to do anything and get out of here. Now after that, we're going to remark it if it does get through. So here, you can see the elephant's trunk moving oh so slowly. You can just take a look at the end here, and every second it is switching to the next frame of the animation. It's a little bit too slow for us, so we're going to go back and change this number to something a little bit smaller, maybe 200 milliseconds. We'll recompile and see what this looks like. Actually, that's better. We got our elephant wagons trunking around, and you obviously will want to play with this until you find a good value for the game that you're creating. It's a smaller value would make that's a little fast, I think. So maybe 100 would be a good number to use. So let's go back and just change it once more to 100 milliseconds. So compiling it now and running it shows the elephant wagging the trunk at a good rate. In this tutorial, I'd like to show you how you might add an image and make its background transparent. So I'm going to actually change the Apple image that we have from the default one to one that I found on the internet. I'm going to set the image to this particular apple that I found. I'll reset it, and you'll see that there's this background that we don't actually want showing. And so what you might do is go and open up a photo and an image editor. On the Mac, there's something called Preview. If I double click that image, I can go and kind of change this picture. I'm going to use the Instant Alpha tool, which is like the magic wand, and all you do with the magic wand is select the background and hit the delete key, and that removes the entire background. Other image editing software will have this tool as well. So now with the background gone, if I go back to the game and reset it, you'll see that the background is gone from there. But as you move the elephant and play the game, you see that the elephant actually still interacts with the apple from a distance, and we don't want that. Looks like it's eating the apple even though it's not touching it. And so we're going to go back to the image, and we're going to use the rectangular selection tool so that we outline the apple so that the outline is just on the around the picture that we want. And we're going to hit the crop button, and this will crop out all the extra background that might be there. The background is there's still going to be a little bit of background, we can't see it, but it's just a lot smaller than before. So now when we save it and we reset our game and we run our game, we move over, and the elephant now has to get a lot closer to actually interact with the apple.